Good morning. I'd like to call to order the special meeting of August the 26th, 2014 of the Columbus Municipal School District. At this time, we do have a quorum present. All members are present today. We move to item number 3 on the agenda, which is to adopt the agenda.
Madam President?
Yes, Mr. Spears.
I do move to adopt the agenda for this morning.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spears. It has been moved by Mr. Spears. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been seconded by Mr. Lewis. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous. Next on the agenda is a presentation of the proposed 2014-2015 McGraw-Hill curriculum. Dr. Hickman.
Okay, if you can put on the. All right. First, I'm going to present the data, the state of our district, through a local through assessment that we did. All right. And so, throughout the process, all of our teachers were trained to give a placement assessment on August the 12th through the 14th, both in reading and math, to assess the current state of our district and to be able to make sure that we have a match with our curriculum. The teachers administered the test on August 13th through the 19th. All the scores and placements presented are based on the Common Core standards expectations for reading, Lexile bands, and mathematics. All right, and so first, if we look at the state of our elementary, only 17% of students read on grade level in first grade. And what that meant was that 83% of our first graders scored at the beginning kindergarten level. The reason why that's obviously significant, 335 of our 406 students, that would mean that they were in school for a year but didn't learn the appropriate materials to move them past that year. Most would say a year wasted. Only 2% of students are reading above grade level. Only 12% of those students are reading on grade level in the 5th grade. So when we look at our school district, and this is our elementary students overall, the bottom actually, we start to create more of an achievement gap through curriculum issues. The reason why this is good is that we do know it's a curriculum and instructional issues. The kids come equipped, but we're not preparing them. And so the data that we had said, when you look at it, the bottom, kids actually start, when they get to the older grades, like 5th grade, they become deficit in multiple grade levels behind. In elementary math, at the 2nd grade level, 68% of our students are already 1 or more grade levels below. At the 5th grade level, 94% of students are below grade level. 33% of 5th graders, students are 3 or more years below. That is significant. At the middle school, 79% of students placed at the kindergarten to 4th grade reading level. 79% of our students in middle school, no matter who their parents are at the kindergarten to 4th grade level. 3% of our students are reading below the 1st grade level. 35% students are reading at the 2nd grade level. 40% of our students are reading at the 4th grade level. Not one student in middle school, not one place reading on or above grade level. Not one. And so what this is showing is, as the students go through our district and they're exposed to our curriculum and instructions, the gap actually widens. The purpose of school, obviously, is not only to educate kids to get them above, on grade level and above, but it's to close the achievement gap. We're actually contributing to the achievement gap as a district. In math, same thing. 100% of our students were below grade level. Not one student. Not one. 20% of the students needed remedial skills instruction at the kindergarten through second grade. They have not mastered basic skills as addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. That's inappropriate. So the question would be, how did all of those students get that far? 80% of middle school students, 80% placed at the third grade level. 80% of our students that are in middle school, and I'm sure those are students who are on the honor roll, those are students who have been successful, allegedly, in our curriculum, 80%. When you look at it as opposed to the Common Core, national standards, 80% are at the third grade level. At the high school, all 9th and 10th graders. Now, the high school, we did a selected population. We did 9th and 10th grade, and we had a little bit of 11th graders. But all 9th and 10th grade students tested for reading and mathematics. 86% of students placed at the 5th grade or lower. 5th grade or lower. 86% of our students in reading. Not one student placed into algebra, one, which is the course that they were enrolled in. At the high school, we had 3% placed at the kindergarten and first grade level, and not all were IEP students. 39% could not read past the second grade lexile of our high school students. Not a selected population of failing students, of our freshmen and sophomore students, every one of them. 36% cannot read past the 4th grade. So if you do the math, that's already in the 70s. Only 8% could read at the 4th grade passage fluently. However, there was a few errors in decoding, and only 14% required further testing for accuracy. So the current state that our kids are in, and the way that the curriculum that we're exposed to and the expectations, because they're not scientifically aligned, because they're not standardized to display rigor, this is the result of what we're doing to our children in our school district. 100% of the students tested were below grade level in mathematics at the high school. 100%. 22 needed remedial instructions in kindergarten and second. And of course, the same thing. They didn't master the basic facts. 76% placed at the third grade level. 76% of our freshmen and sophomores scored about the third grade level. All right. Next, I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Amitra Berry. And she's going to present how we plan to address this issue.
Madam President, just before we move too far away from the presentation, would we be able to ask questions regarding the assessment to Dr. Hickman?
I think questions at this point will be good.
Okay. Dr. Hickman, you stated, just kind of going from the end of your presentation back to the beginning, with respect to the high schoolers, there was a select population. Did I misunderstand you to say?
I said there was not a select population. That was our freshmen and sophomores, sir.
Freshmen and sophomores.
The select population, actually, for some reason, they gave us a group of 11th graders as well.
Okay.
And so those 11th graders who were in geometry, they didn't even qualify. I think it was either 90% of them did not even qualify for a pre-algebra course. They had to pass algebra in order to get to geometry.
Okay. So who determined the pool?
Help me understand. All freshmen and all sophomores.
No, I understand that, but you said a selected amount, and I'm just trying, when you say selected, I want to know what's the selected.
There was not a selected amount. All freshmen and all sophomores took the test.
Okay, all right. So going back to, if you could run the slide back to, get it back up there. The elementary schools that you were talking about, we'll just start from the beginning and work our way forward then. The very first slide, first graders, second graders, and it seems to not have all, I can hold on.
It's okay, because I'm trying to email it to Beth. No, I'm listening. I'm
Okay.
trying to email
Okay.
the Excel. I know what you're going to ask. And so I was going to email the Excel spreadsheet to Beth.
Okay.
So we can pull it up.
Okay.
So
Because it was just that, it's like one part here, one part there.
That's
Do you
understandable.
have like a full outline as to all testing
oh, we do.
components?
We
Okay.
do. And we sent it to you guys, but I understand that there's a time frame. So
That was sent.
or it might have been uploaded.
And Dr. Hickman, while you're pulling that up, for elementary kids, that was data for all of the elementary kids across all grades, all kids, all grades. All kids in all grades.
Yes, ma'am.
My purpose for asking is simply that, we saw round numbers and big numbers, but, to have a complete picture, I would want to see in your presentation, which I assume that's what you're putting up there, if all students were assessed, then we should just be able to see that entire data.
I would love to show you it. I will. And it's a good
Yeah.
question, I think, that you're asking.
Well, thank you. Because I'm not being difficult about it. I just think that it's
No, when,
necessary.
iPhones, they group messages, so I don't know
Right.
what was the message I sent it to. Oh, I do have it. It was actually my first.
It should be the last file. There it is. It's my email.
Okay, so I think you asked a valid question. And so for instance, if you look at all elementary, this data right here is saying all elementary students. And this is where we got it from. So you have, I'm sorry. Can you get another so I can see the lines to move it up and down? Will you be able to move this up? Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, so what? No, all the way down. Obviously, I want to see everything up to the percentages first. Okay, so real quick, if you look at it district-wide, we automatically assume the kindergarten's on grade level. Okay, so this is what the data showed. As the students go through our district, this is first grade, and 17%, if you scroll down more, it's showing that one or more years of our first graders are 83% below. But look how the gap widens. By the time they get to 5th grade, we actually create students who are 2 or more grade levels below. We create this as a district. Go down to math. Same thing. If you look at the math, kindergarten through 5th grade, we start out with a pretty good healthy number at first grade, 0 or multiple grade levels below. But as we educate the kids, we actually miseducate the kids. 5%, 61%. We also can go to individual schools, but it's no, go to Sale Elementary.
One question as we go, so that way we won't get bogged down.
Yes, sir.
So this would take, as you stated, a kindergartner, and just help me understand the assessment better, since I have not seen it. This would take and say, okay, a kindergartner starts out 100% prepared.
No, we didn't assess the kindergartners.
I understand that,
They're
but just
low.
what the chart shows, okay, we would say 100% of value.
Yes.
The next thing would be to say, as they go through time, when that kindergartner arrives in 5th grade, they will be here, and it's in the lower numbers. Is that what you're stating?
I don't know your question. Are you saying that? No, that is a.
So you're taking our 5th graders and you're doing the assessment
At
and
the
you're
5th grade level.
At the 5th grade level, and then you're dialing it back to say, okay, they're actually here at 3rd grade or 2nd grade.
The skills that they're at, it's not a bubble test.
Right.
And so it's looking at the skills.
Because we haven't seen the assessment, and that's why I'm just asking. I don't need to see the assessment.
She has. Go ahead.
I will, but
I can explain. What we did is we start with, I'm Dr. Berry with McGraw-Hill. We start with an assumption that, we already knew from reading that the kids were below. We knew that most of those kids would not be able to read the content because it's heavy in language. 5th grade in Common Core State Standards and math requires that children be able pretty much to read at grade level so that they can operate with word problems. So we started with all students at a level C, which is a 2nd grade level assessment. And then based on whether or not children could perform at that level, move them up or move them down until we find exactly where that child's what's called the zone of proximal development, which is exactly the space in learning that that child is prepared for. They have all the prerequisite skills below that, but they're not ready to go any further. And that's where we place the child. So when we're looking at that those placement points, that tells us what grade level, and sometimes it's a little further in, sometimes it's at the very beginning. So that gives us that band of where each child is.
okay, that makes perfect sense
Yeah,
to me.
and they
Thank
were
you.
performance assessments, much as what children will have to do on the park, where they don't get to select an answer. They actually have to work through a problem and write an answer out.
Okay, that makes perfect sense to me. Thank you.
Do you want to see the rest of them at middle school and high school?
Yes, I still would like to see the
Okay.
percentages.
There are tabs. That's why I said you need to.
If you click on, hold on.
So the same thing, if you look at the middle school, can you scroll down, please, Beth? Can you scroll? All right. Well, you see the first category, 6th, 7th, and 8th. At the middle school level, 0% of our kids scored on grade level. Keep going down a little bit, Beth. And if you, right there, sorry. If you go all the way through, basically, majority of our kids are multiple grade levels below at the middle school at 6th, 7th, and 8th. It mirrors the same in math. Can you scroll down to math? If you look, the older our kids get, This should not be a downward slope. The older our kids get, the more they fall behind. It's almost like the first grade class that went to kindergarten and didn't learn anything, and so therefore they're in first grade, function at the kindergarten level. When they go to second grade, they don't learn, then they're still lower. This is what's happening. Not that they're not learning anything, but they're not learning grade level material, because we have a written curriculum written by ourselves instead of a scientifically written curriculum. And so the expectations of that curriculum, kids are passing, but they're passing lower level work that we developed and we designed. That's an injustice to kids. You want to look at the high school, please? And same thing for our high school. If you look at it, majority of the students, 84%, are 2 or more grade levels below. And that was the freshman and sophomore. And then that was that, this is the 11th grade class. That's in reading, and it mirrors it in math. 97% of our students are 5 or more years below in mathematics. Not a select population of kids. The only group, for some reason, that was an odd group was that 11th grade group. Everyone else district-wide, this is every child in our district that was assessed by our teachers. You have any questions over, because that's the data for the.
Okay, and in the population, that would include IEP.
It's all of our students.
Okay.
Every single freshman.
I just don't, I want to 100% understand that would be every single person.
Every single child, yes, sir.
Disabilities, the whole 9 yards.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But even gifted. Think about, so.
No, exactly.
I know, if you
Yeah.
flip it,
Yeah.
our gifted students are not even on grade level
Okay.
that we classify as gifted.
Okay.
So, Dr. Hickman, for the assessment that was done, the assessment was done at the new Common Core, for the new Common Core standards, not
Dr. Berry.
not based on the Mississippi MCT2
I'm sorry, I missed
standards.
part of your question.
So the assessment that was given to our students was based on the new Common Core standards. So
Yes.
our students may have done pretty good.
May have done
according to
very well on the
Mississippi.
Mississippi assessment, but when you look at the Mississippi assessment and you compare it to what the expectations are for the park, or just the expectations for the Common Core state standards, and in my presentation I do have a little bit on that, the gap between the Mississippi assessment and the incoming assessment is tremendous. So if you consider, just in round numbers, say 60% of your kids were proficient on the Mississippi assessment, you can expect that only about 10% of those students, 10% of your students will be proficient on the park.
And so it's actually an accurate reflection of what she's saying. If you look at, we have less than 10% of our students who are, and if you look at our state standards, we hover around 50%, which is still not, it's not good for a state assessment. And so we have, the purpose of this curriculum, we also have 3 issues that we have to address. We have to address the rigor and the standards. We have to address a technology divide, but we also have to address a time issue. And so there's a pace and sequence of this curriculum that allows kids to get used to functioning under time. Why? Because the Mississippi State assessment has no time. But every other assessment, the park and the Common Core, they are timed assessments. And so it still, a child may have the information in their head, they may have exposure to that knowledge, but if they don't understand that pacing of decision making, and then this is the result of what we're going to get. We're going to have kids who are consistently not performing well. Or, at the end of the day, if you look at our data, the only thing that we can say is that we're graduating kids who are functionally illiterate. If they're multiple grade levels below, they're at the 4th or 5th grade level, and they're finishing our high school with a high school diploma. And that's the same reason why, if you talk to our universities, that they're saying that we spend tons of money because they have to take remedial classes. So it's an issue that we can fix, we can address, and we can tackle. But we have to be real about, first, the current state of what we're doing to our kids. And with the current tools that we have, this is the result. Even though kids are coming home with honor rolls and on passing scores, they're not able to perform. And remember, we are no longer judging kids based off Mississippi. The Common Core and the Park assessment, that's the same assessment they take in Oregon. That's the same assessment that they take in Oklahoma. It's the same assessment they take in Missouri. So now we're going to be judged on a national assessment tool. So it has national standards. The rigor is a little bit different. It's not just and the other thing is, the other scary part of it is that our kids who performed on our Mississippi assessment that didn't have a time, they were able to guess because it was bubbles. This Park, you have to show your work, the same as this assessment tool. The beauty of this assessment tool, we were able to see where kids were making mistakes. We can build a curriculum around that, plugging those gaps. But, so that's another issue that we're going to have to address, is that they have to have a thorough knowledge and not just be able to guess.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, Board, are there any other questions about the data? Because I know.
I
Ms.
just have
Spears?
one more question, and it's Dr. Berry?
Yes.
Yes. How does this assessment compare to the University of Oregon's DIBELS?
The DIBELS?
assessment? Yes.
The DIBELS, Dr. Ed Kameanui, who developed the DIBELS, is a student of the person who wrote this curriculum.
Okay.
Okay, so for starters, there's a long history and alignment there. The DIBELS was nationally normed. These assessments have all been nationally normed, so the validity and reliability of the tools that were used are very high. We actually have a correlation of where kids are in DIBELS to the reading instrument that was used and the reading curriculum that's being proposed. So part of what we're able to do is I can tell you, or we can tell you, and your teachers will know this information, if a student at the second grade is in Reading Mastery 2 at lesson 43, we know exactly where they're going to be 50 days, 60 days, 70 days when the Park assessment comes along. We can also tell you exactly where they're going to score on the DIBELS at the end of the year.
Okay. So, for example, because I know just as I got this information yesterday afternoon, I started researching what assessment as far as, the basic framework. And, looking throughout Mississippi, it's, for example, Oxford High School, A-rated school, very successful. Every year, 3 times a year, they use the DIBELS assessment. And while I understand there's a cost involved, I was just curious if the district were to allow the students to go through the same assessment or that, how those results would compare. Because I look at it in the census that, there's not any conflict of interest in any way with their assessment versus what's here. And so if we were to run that same assessment, would we see the same results?
Right. Okay, so one of the things, the DIBELS is a benchmarking and screening tool. It's used to determine whether or not kids are at grade level and whether they need strategic or intensive intervention. It's a third-party assessment. One of the things I said repeatedly to Dr. Hickman, and he has reiterated to the principals, is that you definitely need, no matter what curriculum you're using, every publisher should tell you, please use an out-of-curriculum third-party assessment tool for benchmarking and screening your kids, because it's just a double check. It's another way to determine whether or not what you're seeing is accurate. We say the same thing. You absolutely, and I know the district has selected a different screener.
STAR and NWEA.
Okay. Different tools, but they do have the same function. You should see a strong correlation between the DIBELS assessment and the STAR and NWEA, although they were normed on different populations.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to pass it to you.
Okay. I guess I don't have to say good morning again, but good morning again. So all of you received a PDF file that has a proposal in it. That was a starting point, and we do say it's a proposal. We expect a little back and forth that can be adjusted, but it really is just the broad picture. So what I'm going to give you, if you will have that document handy, We are not going to go page by page. I've sort of interwoven because I knew there would be some questions. So our big story is that what we want to do from McGraw-Hill Specialized, and to give you a little bit of information, McGraw-Hill has multiple divisions. They are a very large company. My team is the
Positions a year.
specialized team. We work with
as you
primarily
know,
what we say the needy
the,
and the Tweedy. We work a lot in the public school sector,
principals
private school sector,
recommend
the
to the
Tweedy, but we
superintendent,
do a ton
and the
of work
superintendent
in districts that are
recommends
high
if
needs,
he agrees or
underperforming,
she agrees
majority
with the
minority
principal,
populations, high
the
poverty.
positions to the
That
school
really
board and
is
school
where
board
we
votes.
focus, and it's really where I've spent
Well,
my
there
life.
is a
So
step-aside
our goal is to help
procedure
you
when
fulfill
there's
your
going to
mission
be
and
the
make sure that every
employment
child in
of
Columbus is
principal or
properly educated.
superintendent's
And so what you're going to
spouse,
see are two things. You're going to
and,
see things from your proposal, and then you're
that
going to see some
step-aside
things from
procedure
research
is
presentations.
really four
So
steps,
I
two of
know that
which
Dr.
this
Hickman
board
loves
will be
football, so I had to
involved
start
in.
with a little bit of football.
If the
And what we're
board
talking about are
is
children's
willing
trajectories
to
here, trajectories
appoint
of learning.
someone,
He talked about that
it
data and where our
can
kindergartners are
designate a
and where we expect
personnel,
them to be, but what's actually happening.
supervisor,
If you look at
someone
this, and I
within
happen
the
to be a 49ers
administration
fan,
to be
the
the person
trajectory
to
of that
receive the
ball,
recommendation,
you know, most fans are
other
going to tell you
than the
they're not going to make it.
superintendent.
It's not going to make it, right? So when we're
then
looking
that
at the data
person,
for your kids, we're
whoever it
seeing
might
some
be, can
trajectories
then
as well.
receive the recommendation
But let's
that's
talk
coming from
about
a
kids in
principal,
general,
it
and
comes
this
from
is
the
data that
principal,
comes
it
from a
comes
study
from the
called the
SPED office, it could
First
come
Look at
from
the
the SPED
Common
office.
Core. And what these researchers
That
did was they
designated
looked
person
at kids
then
taking
would
the
consider
SAT,
the
ACT
pros
at
and the
grade
cons and
11
make their own
nationwide,
independent
and they
decision as to whether
compared
to
what the
recommend to the
performance
school board that
requirements
person.
are on
If
that
he or she does
assessment
come
to
to that
what
conclusion,
Common Core is going to
then you
require.
got the
And what they
final step
found
is
was that only
he or
one-third to
she
one-half
reports
of
to
the
the board and
students
says, "I
that
recommend
passed
the
the
employment
ACT were
of
actually college and career
Mrs.
ready
Z."
based on Common Core. So we're talking
So
about a
that's
national
where-
sample
and
of
so the
kids
first step
taking
is if
a
the
very
board's
high-level
will is for
assessment,
this,
but
a
only about a
motion can
third
be
to a half
made
of
to
them are actually
designate a
proficient
personnel
when you
supervisor
compare
to
that
whom
or align it to what the Common
who
Core
can
demands.
receive this recommendation.
Only
So
35%
it's my
of those kids
understanding,
are
Mr.
able to
Dunn, that
use
at no
language
point will the
skillfully. And one of the
superintendent be
things that we
involved in
heard
this process at
repeatedly
all.
as we
It
went
cannot
from school to
be.
school and talked to
There are-
teachers and
there's a
principals here in
statute on
Columbus
point for this.
was they
There
were
are
saying our
ethics
kids need
opinions
language. Our kids
on
need
this.
language. And while no, you don't
And
have
they
a
are
large
very, very
percentage of
clear
students who
as
are
to the
identified as
process and
second
very,
language
very clear
learners, what
that
you do
everything
have
we're
is about
doing,
90% of your students
if
speak
you follow the
African-American
process
vernacular
and
English. They're
then
academic
there will
English
be no
learners,
legal
and yet they're not
problems,
receiving an
but the
English language
superintendent has to stay
development
out of it
curriculum. That's one of the things that's
100%.
embedded in the instruction that we're proposing.
And be
Because
recused,
kids
and he
need to be able
recused
to use
himself from
language
this
in
meeting.
order to work with
And then if
content.
the board, if it does
Only
come back to this
34%
board
of
for a
students
vote,
on that
he's got
national
to recuse
assessment
himself
met
and leave the
benchmarks for number
meeting
and quantity
and
based
have
on
nothing to
Common
do
Core.
with
So
the
again, if you're
process.
looking
So
at
at
a
this
third
time,
of those
we're
kids, what
we're
does that say for
initiating
the
this
kids in
process for the
Columbus when we're looking at those
consideration,
middle and high school scores
of
for
employment.
mathematics?
At this time.
They're
So the
not meeting
designation
benchmarks
of a
for number and
personnel
quantity.
supervisor to receive
And
the
only
recommendation
31%
for,
understood complex
Ms. Z.
text. Now,
And
I know
can't
Dr.
say her
Hickman
last
said it
name
once, but
yet.
I'm going to
Is it
underscore. The
Zal-
assessment tools you
Zalzala.
use
Zalzala?
at grades
Zalzala.
6 through
Zazala.
10
Exit
for
on the
reading
first syllable.
Yeah.
were leveled
Zalzala.
passages, leveled on Lexile, and then
So,
aligned
Board,
to
this
Common
will
Core, what
require
the
a
Common Core
motion,
Lexile bands
and
demand that kids read.
The motion would
We never got
probably
to complex
read
text.
something like
We
this.
never got there.
There has to be a motion
Not
to
here.
designate, and if we choose to designate the deputy
So I show you
superintendent,
this
Mr.
picture
Craig
because this is
Shannon,
one that evokes
as
a
the
lot of
personnel
memories for those of us who
supervisor
studied
to accept the
a long time
recommendation
ago. And
for
we know that the
employment
trajectory
and
of
make the
children back
recommendation to
in
the
the
board.
industrial age
That
was
is
that they couldn't
basically
cut it.
what
There was a
Mr.
place
Dunn
for them
is
to work.
advising
But what we
that
know
we do
now
according to
is
state
that our
statute.
kids who are not
That's
doing
the
well
will
in
of the
school, the
board, that's
factory
the
jobs
process
aren't
to
there for
follow.
them either. We have to do something better for children. So
Yes,
in your
Mrs. Fisher.
proposal, you'll see
I move
this
that
diagram,
we receive
and that
or
is what MHE
accept the
Specialized is
recommendation
proposing
as,
for Columbus. Why you
articulated
need
by
to
you
look at these, why this is
to,
good for kids in Columbus.
name Mr. Shannon,
First
our
and foremost,
deputy
it's already been said,
superintendent,
you
to
do not
receive
have
the
a comprehensive
recommendation
curriculum. You have bits and pieces,
employment
and
of
you have
Mrs.
things that have been
X.
designed by people here in
Is there a
Columbus
second?
Municipal Schools. And there's
It
nothing
has been
wrong with
motioned by
teachers
Mrs.
designing
Fisher.
curriculum
It has
if they
been
can do it
seconded
with
by Mr.
scientifically
Lewis. Is
validated
there any
approaches.
discussion?
And I use a lot of
We have
medical
to, in the
analogies.
motion
So
and the
here's,
second,
and
do
we all
have
have
to
moms who had,
specifically
a home
identify
remedy
the
for
title that
something.
Mr. Dunn
But when you're really sick,
mentioned,
you
and
go
that
to the
is
doctor,
personnel
and you get a
supervisor. That
prescription
wasn't
for a
in the motion, but
medication
do we
that's
need to
designed
say
to
personnel
cure what
supervisor,
illness
or
you
is the
have.
motion-
We
Yes,
don't play
ma'am.
around with
Yes,
that.
sir.
If one of your
And I thought
children
that's what
had,
Ms.
and you'll see
Fisher
an
said,
example,
to
whooping
designate
cough. One of your
Mr.
kids had
Shannon as
whooping
a
cough.
personnel
Would you take them down the
supervisor.
street
I don't
to a
think
neighbor
personnel
and say, what do you
supervisor
think
was
you
part
can
of the
do for this
motion.
child? Do you
Right,
have a
to
home
whom
remedy
the
that you think might
recommendation
work?
for Mrs. Z
No,
would
you would take your child to the best
Come
medical
go to.
facility you could find, get the
For
best
consideration.
doctors and the
Are there
best
any other
medication.
questions
So we're looking
or
at
issues?
rigor, number one,
If
that
not,
we're
all
using
in
a
favor
highly
of the
rigorous
motion, please
curriculum.
signify by
Number
raising
two,
your
we're
right
looking at
hand.
consistency. Everything
It
that
is
we're
unanimous.
proposing is consistent from K through 10.
And just
So
for the sake
every
of the public and the board,
every
this
level
would
of
come up at
instruction
an
within
additional
reading, language,
meeting,
arts,
some
within
meeting
math, up
down
to
the road,
algebra,
if that's
is
what Mr.
aligned
Shannon
one lesson
concludes.
to
There
the
are three
next,
more
grade
steps
to
to
grade.
this process.
The
Right.
language
Right.
that's
Thank you,
used,
Mr.
and
Dowd.
all of these programs do have a script to them. The reason for that is so that the language is consistent from classroom to classroom, school to school, and grade to grade, so that children are listening to, they're hearing and working with academic English, they're working with higher language, and they're working with higher comprehension. That brings us to validity. One of the things that we are very proud to say, and I represent the SRA portfolio of products, and I always like to get just a little nostalgic. Many of you
At this
went
time,
to
we have
school, and in
moved
the
to our
back of the
last item
classroom,
on
there
the
was a
agenda,
box.
which is
And in that
to
box were some
adjourn.
cards
This
with
does
colors
require a
on the
motion.
border.
Is there a
And you
motion to
pulled a
adjourn?
card, and you read a story. I
There's a
see some
motion by
heads
Mr.
nodding.
Lotzenheiser.
And you
Is there a
answered some
second?
questions, and you were racing
Second by
to
Mr.
beat
Lewis.
your
Is there
friend
any
to the
discussion?
purple level, right?
All in
Okay,
favor,
that's
please signify by
SRA. It's
raising
been
your right
around
hand.
since the 1950s.
It is unanimous.
These products, these
Meeting
programs,
adjourned.
this curriculum has been consistently validated and normed in populations since 1963. We're the only publishers that can say that, because other things are fashion statements. They pull something together, they sell it a lot in a state, and 2 years later the product is gone. Why? Because it was cute, but it didn't work. So they're going to give you something new. And what are they going to say the next time? Oh, well, this one will work. We don't say that. We keep saying this works, it always works. It's been working for almost 50 years. It's consistent, it's reliable, it's valid. And what we do is we teach children, as well as the content, we teach them tool skills. Because if you can't read in general, you can't read your social studies book. You can't read the science book. You can't read the word problems in mathematics. So what we want to do is train children, train teachers, teach content, teach tool skills. How to take what I'm learning here and use it over here. How do I take reading and comprehension skills that I'm learning in my reading class and apply them in my social studies class? Those are tool skills, they're portable. And we also help the teachers understand how to be better teachers across content areas, because we're giving them strong professional development. So tool skills in a comprehensive solution involves reading, language arts, language development, again, for your academic English learners, those students who come to school not speaking the language of school, spelling, writing, and mathematics, all the way up to the first third of Algebra 1. In a standard district or school population, what we should see is only about 5% of students that are falling into Tier 3. On the Dibbles, that would be the children who fall into the intensive category. 80% or more of your students should be in Tier 1, at or above grade level. What we see in Columbus is that more than 90% of your students are at Tier 3 needing an intensive approach. Your triangle is inverted. So we would prefer to act more like scientists in terms of what kids need. And there's my whooping cough. This is from an old presentation that I did. When we see that there's a rise in an illness, and lately it's been whooping cough, what are we saying? There are billboards, there's this whole campaign, get your child immunized. We say the same thing about illiteracy and innumeracy. Let's get the children in Columbus immunized against illiteracy and innumeracy. We know that you can't swap your kids out for a higher performing population, right? Not possible. Your parents send you the absolute best children they have. They're not keeping the good ones at home in a closet somewhere. But what you can change is what's happening in the classroom every single day. And the best way to do that is to start with inoculation. We've known for years that the majority of children who come to kindergarten ready to learn, but at risk, either because of poverty, because of a home environment that is not highly literate or highly numerate. They can learn to read at or above average levels if, and this is from Reed Lyon, they're identified early and provided with effective, systematic, and explicit instruction. Keyword there being effective, knowing it works. And when you look at your data, and if you just look at first grade and ask the question, is our kindergarten instruction working? What's your answer? So we know that we can change trajectories if we do a few things. The first is you have one single well-integrated system. We look at students as general education first, because much of what's happening so that children are identified and end up with IEPs is that the instruction isn't working. It's not the child. In your population as a whole, you should only have 2 to 3% of your children who have true cognitive impairments that mean that they need extra work in learning how to read, write, think, and calculate. Okay, I don't recall off the top of my head what the population, IEP population is. Anybody know that number? I'm looking at Ms. Lenore. 16 to 20%. Okay, so that's a lot of kids that are not receiving appropriate instruction. Those kids can be fixed, okay? We want to focus on student outcomes. Where is it that the child needs to be at the end of a year, at the end of 2 years when they graduate from high school? And we prefer to use a model that is preventative, not wait until they fall and then try to catch them up. So what you'll see is, all of this curriculum has been scientifically validated. It's been validated in like demographics. So in other schools and districts that are 90% African American or higher, high Title I. It's comprehensive, it's fully aligned. Everything matches the next level, next lesson. We have in-program measurable progress and benchmarks, but again, I strongly recommend that the district have an out-of-program benchmarking and assessment tool so that we look at triangulating data. There has to be a decision-making process in order. We would work with that with your teachers and coaches. That's something that our consultant team does to make sure that the decision-making, that should be process, is appropriate. Every year, going back and looking in an annual review, what adjustments need to be made. And we don't wait for 1 year to be up with our consultants. When we see things not happening appropriately over a 10-day period, we make adjustments. So we make adjustments every 2 weeks. And then identifying additional resources. Again, having that external professional development is key. So in an inoculation model, we want to make sure that every child is okay. And I'm going to skip some things. So in medicine, if you take your child to the doctor, they're going to ask some questions as they begin to diagnose them. How old is your child? How large, how small, how much do they weigh? If their white count is this, then how much antibiotic do they need? And we're all familiar with that model. What we should have in education is a system that asks, and this is what we did, first and foremost, what grade is the child in? Secondly, how far behind? What grade level are they working at? So therefore, what's the gap? How much instruction do they need to receive every year, week, and day? So the model that's been put together to address high school students is that given the recommended time in instruction, we can close 5 years worth of gap in 1 year. And I'm going to say that again to underscore. The expectation, if the model is implemented with strong fidelity, the time given to instruction that's required, your children can grow 5 years in this first year. But that's provided that you start very soon. Why delay? And then how many times a day does a child need a dosage? There are some kids who will need a double block of reading. There are pretty much all of your students at the middle and high school need a double block of mathematics. That's almost a non-negotiable. They need that time. How do we effectively and economically deliver for these outcomes? So again, I'm going to, in the interest of time, skip through some things. Most of your kids are here, Tier 3, and ICU. They need intensive instruction. They need it regularly. They need it daily. So 5 things have to happen. First, testing has to be regular and it has to be rigorous. That means every type of assessment that's given needs to have a time factor. If I ask all of you, can everybody here run 2 miles? Eventually. Yeah, I get on the treadmill, I can go 2 miles. It may take me about 45 minutes to do it, but I can do it. But a world-class athlete does it in how much time?
11 minutes?
10, 11 minutes, right? Okay? So if you give your kids all the time in the world to complete a task, they may complete it. But is that effective? Is it efficient? Is it good for the child? And the answer to those questions are no. Regular and rigorous testing. We have to follow the science. There's enough science about reading and math that we don't need to be recreating wheels. Teachers should spend their time and energy teaching children, not creating curriculum. We have to be obsessive about the data, and we do collect data, in-program data, out-of-program data, and have data meetings regularly to make sure that things are occurring as they should. Do the right thing and do the right thing right. What we know is that we have the right tools and instruments to make the change here, but we have to ask that the district be committed to implementing that with fidelity so that students get what they need. And the last one that middle school and high school principals always hate to hear, rethink that master schedule. But in talking with your middle school and high school principals, they're ready to do that. They're ready to make that commitment. So you'll see in your proposal the key recommendations for program and how those are placed. And I'm going to zip through those very quickly. Early childhood, you just had an early childhood adoption call in the state of Mississippi. DLM Early Childhood Express was approved by the state of Mississippi in that call in July. Funding is released in October. That should not come out of your district reserve funds. That should be, this purchase should be funded by the state of Mississippi. So, DLM is a whole child curriculum, focuses first on social emotional development, has a strong base in language because, again, we know that if the children don't have language when they leave preschool, they will not be able to operate well in kindergarten. That's where the gap begins to grow, is in language. We work on emergent literacy, making sure that children know what a book is. How we read, that the words on a page have meaning, and that meaning is conveyed when that speech, that print, is turned to speech by someone reading. So we work a lot with comprehension and higher order thinking, even with children in preschool. Math, science, social studies, fine arts, physical and motor development, both gross motor and fine motor, and all those skills are assessed. So that, because we know that if children have fine motor and gross motor skill deficits in preschool, that it may be indicative of other problems. So there are assessment tools built into DLM Early Childhood Express, and we've given you some additional assessment tools as free with order. Am I in your way? I'm sorry. I tend to walk around a lot. To make sure that physical development is on track, on trajectory as well. They also have technology. So even at the preschool, we're looking for children in preschool to work with digital devices. Rationale for this program, first and foremost, it's comprehensive. It is a classroom in a kit. Everything that your preschool teachers will need is in there. We give very strong teacher support, both in person, and we have virtual online professional development. And instruction is differentiated for those children who might need a little something extra. Questions on DLM? Any questions so far? Because I'd have to back up a long way if I keep going. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much for your presentation. One of the things that I heard you quote was the percentage of in-house developed curriculum. Mm-hmm. What was that percentage again?
I didn't give you a percentage of the curriculum that's been developed in-house. What I understand is that much of what your teachers are doing is building curriculum based on supplemental products and programs, piecing things together.
Individually? Okay. As opposed to having a standard? Mm-hmm. Okay. Given that, what I hear you saying, and I'd like to make sure that I understand what it is you're saying, and you can tell me if I'm correct in my understanding. But what I hear you saying is that because we have provided our children with customized instruction, which has been individually developed by the instructors, that we have really given them tools to fail in a national or global society.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's a different recap, but yes, I would agree with you 100%.
Okay.
And where we see that happening, the results are the same across the country.
Okay. But what I also hear you saying in the rationale part, the strong teacher support, I think I wrote down that what you will do is reassess this every 10 days, 2 weeks?
When our teachers are our consultants push into your classrooms. And Dr. Hickman's been very adamant. He wants more, more, more. And I'm giving you enough. There's enough in there. He wants more. Our consultants will push in and they will teach side by side with your teachers. So if the children are not performing as expected, again, because we know exactly where kids will be if we do it this way, they'll interject scientifically.
Okay.
If you don't take your penicillin when you have, right? Okay. So we're talking about, let's just make it penicillin. If they don't get their doses, they're not going to get well. So what the consultants do is they look for fidelity, and when they see gaps in the fidelity, and this is something we work with the teachers with so they know what to expect, we will ask to model that instruction and give the teacher the reason why we're going to model what we are. We want to make sure that every child is in the right place, moving as fast as they can. So they will interject, they will teach the teacher right there on the spot with their kids, and then they back out. So you're going to get very strong teacher support, the type of support that you don't get with any other publisher, any other curriculum.
And because the teachers are able to get that support and not have to concentrate on developing their own curriculum, our children are going to benefit because they'll get more instructional time and better
Yes.
quality instructional time.
Better time on task and better task management. Your teachers, I have to say, it was the first time it's ever happened to me. I taught, not this curriculum, but the Reading Mastery curriculum that we're about to look at, and the corrective reading, and the connecting math concepts. I taught those programs. That's why I work for McGraw-Hill. I became a better teacher, even though I thought I was pretty darn good before I got this stuff. They will be much better teachers because of this, and then they'll take those skills and they'll apply them elsewhere. Your teachers applauded when they saw that they were not going to have to create their own instruction. They were happy.
The other benefit is that it's consistent across district.
Yes.
So we eliminate, it's consistent within the building and across district. So we eliminate that gap where you have to determine which teacher is a good teacher or which building is a good building for your child to go to, that we can ensure across our district, no matter what classroom a child walks into, that they will have a high quality education. Am I correct?
Correct. So if a child moves from a reading mastery grade 2 lesson 47 at Sale and they move to Fairview, when Fairview gets them, their data, because it's already in a digital portal, their data goes with them. So Fairview knows this child was at lesson 47, their last mastery test, they were at mastery. We have a group that's at lesson 45. We're going to put them right there. Child loses nothing.
Dr. Berry?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I have a lot of questions, but I think
Okay.
you've been answering most of them. But I heard you say that everything is aligned. So I know you meant that it's aligned to the Common Core standards.
Yes.
But everything is aligned from the teacher support, from the materials that's being taught. All of that is
Everything.
aligned.
Yes. Vertical, horizontal alignment, everything is aligned to standards. Lesson to lesson, level to level, reading to language arts, to spelling, to writing. We talk about completely integrated. If you have the old school and what I was taught in teacher school, and I'll back up and say my mother is a school, now retired, School of Ed professor. So I've had this stuff hammered in me since I was a very little girl. When I went to teacher school, as I call it, what I was taught to do in terms of teaching children spelling or vocabulary, take spelling, you have a spelling list, right? You have this list of words. What are they connected to? Nothing.
Right.
But you have a list of 20 words that you get each week. And on Monday, they write the word 3 times. On Tuesday, they write them in alphabetical order. On Wednesday, right, we're laughing, but that's what we do. On Friday, the kids spit out this test, and they may or may not do okay, but when do they see those words again? They don't. Or they might. In the reading program, the next one up is Reading Mastery, that's the K3. The spelling words are words that are lifted from the reading passage that they're going to have, and they're going to be working with those words in spelling, in their writing, in their reading every single day for 5 days. And because this program is so well thought out and developed, those words are going to come back into their reading, writing, and language and vocabulary again 3 lessons later, 10 lessons, I'm trying to remember the algorithm, 13 lessons, and then again further out. So we never let anything go away completely. In fact, sort of the big overarching picture of reading mastery, connecting math concepts, essentials for algebra, corrective reading, and corrective math that you'll see is that 80% of what's taught on any given day is review, only 20%, 15 to 20% is new material. So while we're constantly teaching the kids new information, we're constantly bringing back in things that they should already be fluent in and continuing to develop that information. Because if you've ever done something for a period of time, I played the clarinet when I was in elementary school and middle school. I haven't touched a clarinet since 9th grade. I don't know if I could blow the thing. Why? Because I haven't had practice in it. If you've ever played a sport and left it for a period of time, I was a gymnast. Don't ask me to do a backflip. It's not happening. Why? Because I'm not using that skill and those proficiencies continually. The same is true of children when it comes to learning. If we're not bringing that information back in on a regular basis, they will lose the ability to operate with it. Foreign language. Anybody here take foreign language in high school, college? How fluent are you now if you don't use it?
Hablo español poquito.
Sí, pero un poquito muy mal. Okay. Any other questions, ma'am? Ready for me to go?
I have just one
I
question.
expect questions from you. That's why I keep waiting. Come on.
Okay. My question is that, you know, everything is a very robust platform and well executed, and obviously from the many, many decades ago that I was in grade school and things, McGraw-Hill obviously is a staple in the educational platform. My question is that with all the testing and all the assessments and different things currently, how many districts, because I know you cover southern states, how many districts in Mississippi currently utilize your platform?
That number I would have to pull. What I can do is pull a users list and I can get you that information. In your proposal are some districts that we list as referral districts.
Right.
Those are districts that have said, tell folks to call me.
Right.
This has worked so well, I want folks to call me. But we can pull a users list for the state of Mississippi. It's not, I mean,
Sure.
this year I'm lucky I only
Start
have
with
5
failure
states.
and engineer yourself back to success.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right. If you would do that, I would greatly
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Fred, you got that? Okay. That's your only question?
At this point, yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
all right. So Reading Mastery is the program based on data that we recommend for your kindergarten through 3rd grade students for reading language arts development. Again, research validated, fully differentiated, explicit, systematic, fully specified, aligned to Common Core, and it's been validated across tiers for RTI. So the way that Reading Mastery works, or will work in this implementation is, although most of your students are Tier 3, which means they're placing off grade level, they will be accelerated. So if you're a 1st grader and you're placing at the beginning of kindergarten, we can't just teach you kindergarten this year. That means you'll still be a year behind next year. So the idea is to have enough time and to, because of the way the lessons are structured, there are places where kids can skip. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, will you please explain to us what RTI is?
I'm so sorry,
That's
yes.
okay.
RTI is response to intervention, and it's the idea that, sort of going back to that medical model, how old is the child? DIBELS is a good piece that's used for RTI. How much instruction do they need? How far behind are they? And so you develop an instructional model so that we're responding. I prefer response to instruction, but they said to intervention, so that as children get better, we move them out of intervention and into grade level instruction.
Thank you.
We do that by using a single program that can be accelerated for gifted kids. They can work above grade level, works as a regular grade level program for kids on grade level, and for those that are below, the kids are double dosed or accelerated again so that we can close a gap. So a 1st grader, that makes sense? Okay, so 3 tiers. So a 1st grader who's placing at the beginning of the kindergarten level will be on preferably what's called a fast cycle. or we have to double dose until we get them firm, because if they're not absolutely firm with kindergarten skills based on the Common Core, those foundational skills, they will not read on time. And that's what we're seeing. So they will close that 2-year gap this year. And so this year's first graders, again, with high fidelity and in a proper implementation, will be on or above grade level at the end of the year. The same is true of second graders who are, again, even placing at the kindergarten level. We can have them on grade level at the end of the year. Third graders might take about 1.5 years to get there, but again, before they hit the middle of 4th grade, they should be at or above grade level. Again, as the gap gets larger, so for 4th and 5th grade, we look at 2 years to close that gap. That's reading mastery. At grades 4 through 10, we propose Flex Literacy. Flex Literacy is a digital-first hybrid program, so it's got a digital adaptive component. It's like an individual adaptive tutor for every child, and the child works in a digital environment that very much mirrors the environment of the PARCC assessment. Even though we developed before PARCC, there's enough communication about what's going to be required in terms of manipulating and operating in the PARCC environment that we knew how to build this. So digital first, each child is in a digital, then they have a shared reading component, and then they have a project experience that's designed on understanding by design, where they work on their 21st century skills. So they are building portfolios, they are doing presentations, they will learn how to do a spreadsheet in Word, a PowerPoint presentation, a spreadsheet in Excel, not a spreadsheet in Word, spreadsheet in Excel, a PowerPoint presentation, Word documents. They will learn internet etiquette, how to respond to a blog, how to develop a blog, why you don't write in all capital letters in an email. So we teach them things, how to operate in the environment that they're going to have to operate in. They do presentations on a routine basis. We work with poetry, expository, and narrative text in science and social studies. So because, again, these kids are low, we know that they're not getting their science or social studies content either. So this program gets their reading language arts, their presentation skills, their technology skills, science content, and social studies content, having them working across content areas in a very focused manner. So 86% of your students grade 4 and 5 clearly placed into this, and then 80% of your middle school students clearly into here, and 77% of your 9th and 10th graders that fell well below. Flex goes up to, right now the build goes up to the end of 8th grade. So we look for 2 years, no more, but for some of your kids, they might need the 3rd year build, which will go up to 10th grade. What you have proposed right now only goes to the 8th grade. But because it's a subscription, which you buy for students at the end of each year, if it's needed later on, you can add on that 3rd year for the build. Questions on Flex? You did have a number of students, roughly 3%, that needed something that was much more intensive than Flex Literacy. And for that, we proposed corrective reading. Corrective reading has been around for 45 plus years. A very, very valid and reliable program. It is probably, when we pull the users list, you will see more corrective reading across the state of Mississippi than you do the other programs, which we really would rather not see. We don't want to see kids needing a corrective reading or a corrective math program, because what it says to us is we're doing something wrong in the general education environment, and we're losing kids to this. So the acceleration in corrective is much faster. Really, we're restricting that to those children who are in the middle or the high school only, not using in the middle school, who place at the kindergarten 1st grade level, because otherwise it's just going to take too long for them to catch up. So this is designed as an added layer in the Flex band. Instead of the shared reading, they'd have the corrective reading. Again, very validated, fully differentiated, fully specified, but very, very intensive instruction. Questions? Okay. K-5 mathematics, connecting math concepts, again, much like reading mastery, only for math. So again, children place tested, determined where they should be and then as much as possible accelerated here more through double dosing than skipping, because math skills tend to be harder for kids to hold on to, particularly when they're also struggling with the reading. So like the other programs in the SRA portfolio, demographically validated, fully differentiated, explicit systematic, fully specified scripted lessons, we're seeing from your data a steadily increasing achievement gap from grades 1 to grade 5, with 94% of your fifth graders below grade level in mathematics. And I think I said earlier, one of the challenges is that the fifth graders can't read the test for fifth grade. But as we looked higher and looked at your middle school math scores, middle school math results, that just tells us that we're pretty spot on with the elementaries. Even though they can't read the assessment, they wouldn't be able to perform the skills anyway. At your alternative school, because that population is very small, we proposed ALEX Mathematics in the alternative school. It is fully digital artificial intelligence. It's really state-of-the-art mathematics. Part of the reason we couldn't use that wider, one, kids have to be able to read to do ALEX. Two, every child needs a device in order to do ALEX, and they need that device full time. It just won't operate on a CART system. We were struggling trying to come up with a system to use the technology that's in place to get the kids in flex literacy, and that's a 2-to-1. Only half the kids need to be on computer. But I think we got that kind of worked out, shifting CARTs and the way the time is blocked. We're going to be able to work on that. With ALEX, that just wouldn't work wider. And again, very concerned about the reading level. But because your kids go to the alt school for only a small period of time, it would allow each child on the day that they enter the alt school, so if they're only on a 3, 4, 5-day suspension, they're getting math at their level, and they're getting a full program of mathematics. So they're getting that math instruction all the time. Neat thing is, if they have a device at home, they can do this at home. When they go back to their regular school, when they have access to a device, they can continue in their ALEX program because their subscription is good for a year. Okay? Algebra Prep 610.
There's
Essential.
a question, Dr.
Oh, I'm
Berry.
sorry.
Question,
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry. When you mentioned the, thank you, when you mentioned the alt school and stating that if a child was in the alt school for 3 to 4 days, that they would not miss their grade level or their assessed level instruction, which means that it's still individualized and it's still following them.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And just one question is that you stated that this is all web-based.
This is all, yeah, this and Flex Literacy are web-based.
So when they go
cloud-based.
to the alternative school, they can access it anywhere, even if the alternative school was not here. I mean, if they were at home or if they were at a different location, as long as they had their credentials to log in.
A child with, yes, a child, in fact, Reading Mastery and Connecting Math Concepts both have a digital piece, a technology-independent practice. We've proposed, and in the quotes you'll see that we did those as free with order, a license for every child. So no matter where that child is, they will log on to the ConnectEd platform, and they're reading their math, their independent reading, because one of the other things you'll see in the proposal for every school is a license for the digital reading labs, a license for every child. So on their smartphone, their iPad, their Surface, their anything, they can log on and get their own personal library, their math practice, their reading practice from anywhere.
And so there's just no certificate designated to a particular unit?
No.
Computer unit?
No.
Okay, perfect,
No.
thank you.
And so, Dr. Berry, in that same scenario, the faculty, the staff that's at that facility would have had some training to make sure that they can guide those students.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes. Part of the professional development by program is learning all the digital tools that are in the program, how to sign on, how to set up your ConnectEd account, how to work in the ConnectEd platform. We do everything.
But it's
Yes.
not that a child can independently just access the program and learn and work, that there's an adult that needs to help guide, especially when they have problems and those
Yes.
kind of things. So it doesn't take the place of an adult,
No,
right, an instructor, sorry.
no.
So to understand this a little bit clearer, they can access it at home, but the child wouldn't be capable of fully utilizing the program?
The only thing that we would recommend that kids routinely access from home is the reading lab, which is no different from a child picking up a book and reading. We do strongly discourage telling children to access it at home because we don't know who's doing the work at home.
Sure.
It could be a parent, it could be a sibling, and again, because everything is driven by data, if somebody else is operating in that child's, it's like doing somebody else's homework. We don't have a solid picture of that child if somebody else is doing the
There
homework.
would be standard deviations that you could tell what a normal median of that performance of that child, and if they're utilizing at a different location and those scores are going way up or way down, then you would see those
It
deviations.
would call question, but you can't
Right.
back that data out and replace it with accurate
Sure.
data. So it's just not a good idea to have kids operating independently from home, except for the reading labs.
So they would
Reading
only
labs
need to be doing this at
at
school.
school.
And
In
when they're
fact,
at home,
all
they're-
of these programs,
Right.
none of these programs have a homework component to them.
Sure.
And the reason for that is because the only place where we can be absolutely certain the child is not practicing error sets is when it's happening in class. If they take it home, homework should be perfect practice. And that's what they'll get here. When they have performed at a very high level, and our standard of performance across all programs, there are 2 grades. There's a pass and a fail, basically. They are passing if they're operating at 85% or higher every single day, every task, every exercise. They are failing when they hit 84. Your current failing benchmark is 60%. So what we're going to do is eliminate kids that are struggling, making everybody practicing perfect. So when they have that perfect practice, when they have mastered
Sure.
something, that can go home as practice, and it's more like a showpiece. Let me read for mom, let me show mom my math, or dad, or whoever, my math facts.
Yeah, let me, real quick, the model that actually we're describing for the alternative school doesn't exist
Correct.
because they're not a short-term suspension center. That's something that we would like to propose.
Okay.
So what it is a long-term suspension center. But the beauty of all the programs is what you said earlier, is that it follows the child. And so even though if a child made a mistake, God forbid, in our regular school, traditional school setting, and they have to go to the alternative school, we still know where they're at.
Right.
And
So-
if they're in a way that we need to give them the instruction that you're named with this program, or if they're still with regular corrective math or all those programs, that's where the adults come in
Right.
and are able to
So
instruct those individuals.
The alt school will operate flex. So a fourth through ninth grader in flex at whatever school, if they go over to the alt school, they're still in flex.
Yes.
The alt school is operating, well, the attempt was essentials for algebra, but none of the kids had the skills for it, so they're corrective math site. So if the child is in corrective math at the high school and they go to the alt school, their data follows them, they know what lessons to deliver. Part of the reason we proposed Alex, which is that it allows an alt teacher who has 5 kids in 5 different programs on 5 different levels, the child has a place to continue to practice quality mathematics while the teacher is working with other children. Again, impossible for a teacher to teach 5 children 5 different skill sets on 5 different levels.
Now, one other question that I have, not just with respect to the alternative school, is how does this platform prevent skill atrophy? You know, you have the gap where students are not in school, they're obviously out for the summer, and that's one thing that when you see that transition from grade to grade, to where kids seem to, ebb back into other, problem issues. And so with it being a platform that's web-based, obviously that's a great platform because they would have tools to utilize, but at the same time, we just stated they shouldn't use it at home. So what is it inside of the platform that helps prevent that particular atrophy?
Well, I think what you're saying is you're talking what we call the summer slide.
Yes.
Okay, so they come back and it's like, what happened over the summer? Well, what happened was that they never mastered the content from the prior year.
Right.
So they didn't have anything to hold on to anyhow.
Sure.
In this instructional model, they master the content from the prior year. And if you can ride a bicycle today, you can ride a bicycle 2 months from now, unless something's happened to you physically.
Sure.
Okay? When the data follows the child as they move from grade to grade, already built into the instructional model, we know if the student's in, I've been using lesson 47, so let's say they're on lesson 47 on the last day of school, which is another thing, we don't stop teaching. We teach from day 1 of school to day 180 of school. No matter what. Testing comes, we still teach. So instruction doesn't stop for test prep. Test prep is about learning everything that's being taught every single day. We teach to the end of the school year. So if your kindergartners, for example, finish the kindergarten level early, let's say they get through all 165 lessons and it's only May 1st, you know what they do? They start lesson 1 of level 1. We don't stop. We do not stop. So when they come back to school, we know what lesson and level they were on. We back up, typically it's about 5 lessons, but back to the beginning of a story series, because the stories are serialized across lessons. We go back to the first story in that series, which may be 5 to 7 lessons. To bring them back, they'll connect to the things they had the prior year. Most teachers do some sort of skill review, and then they continue on. So there is no slide. Same is true of mathematics. Again, we know what their last mastery test was. We'll back up 10 lessons. That's the review, and then we move forward. That also gives us a chance to see if there are children who are not truly at mastery, what skills we need to pick up and remedy on. We do not remediate, we remedy. We fix it. We don't just keep hammering something they didn't get before. So all of that happens in the first 10 days of school, and then they move forward.
Okay, thank you.
So my question was, I know that this is a rigorous curriculum, but as it relates to Common Core, are we just trying to meet the very minimum of
No.
Common Core?
No.
Will this take us above and beyond what Common Core will require for our students to be able to do?
Absolutely. And again, remember what I said, we don't stop teaching.
Right.
So if you wanted for minimum of Common Core, we could drop that it wouldn't be mastery, but we could drop the criteria from 85% down to 60. That would not be mastery, that would get you minimum Common Core. 85% or higher. And at the middle school and high school, we will raise that to 90% or higher, because we have to know those children know this content like they know their names, or better. That they have facility with math facts, that they have facility that they decode, that they read accurately, fluently, with prosody, with meaning that they understand. So we're going to raise that benchmark a little bit at the middle school and high school level because of the increased risk for those kids. So that means that when it comes to a Common Core assessment, they're not struggling. Okay? Because if first grade is aligned to first grade Common Core and your first graders finish first grade and move into second, then they're going well ahead of what's required. But the math program, for example, does go at least at every grade level, goes up 1 to 2 grade levels while still in, compared to Common Core. So if they're in the second grade, if they're actually in math level C, which would be the Common Core second grade, they're still getting, or they're also getting, standards from Common Core grade 3 and grade 4 while they're in the second grade instruction. And the reason it happens and why it happens when it does is because there are certain points where it makes sense to go ahead and build that concept so that children understand it much deeper. We are not the inch deep, mile wide. We are the mile deep, inch wide, which is what benefits children in other countries that use an approach to mathematics very similar to the one this is built on.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher?
It was Common Core related.
So the Algebra Prep program, Essentials for Algebra, actually goes from basic division through the first 1/3 of Algebra 1. We proposed a 2-period block for this instruction at the 6th and 7th grade so that all independent practice can be monitored so that children will not go home and do homework and struggle with homework, so that the teachers will observe everything. At the high school, we need the 2-period block so that they can complete this course in a semester and then take Algebra 1 second semester. Because these 9th and 10th graders that are in Algebra 1 right now are not prepared for it. It would not make sense for them to take Algebra 1 and the prep class because they will suffer in Algebra 1, which turns kids off to learning. We want them to be highly successful every minute of every day. So if we do this first semester, they do Algebra 1 second semester, they're done. they're done, and they can move on through the Common Core strand of mathematics. Why? All of your middle school students, very low. One of the questions that was asked as we were training the teachers on the placement tests at the high school, they kept asking the question, what do we do with our kids who don't place in here? What do we do with our kids who don't place in here? And our consultant thought that the teachers were asking, what about the kids too high? The question was really, the teachers were recognizing as they were looking at that placement test, their kids couldn't do the addition, subtraction, multiplication, division that was in the first part of the test. And truly, when we look at the assessments, and those are coming back, Ms. Lenore, you will be receiving a bunch of boxes from FedEx. I would invite you to go and take a look at some of those assessments and see how your children were responding to adding two-digit numbers, to subtracting with regrouping, what we saw, an inability to multiply, very, very low skills in division. Fractions were not, I was going to say not mastered. It was kind of missing. So this program backs up, it picks up from long division very quickly, and I'm going to show you this, and then it goes into algebra skills through the first third of algebra. The reason for it going so far is so that when children then go into Algebra 1 and they go into something that's much less structured, they've already got all those basic skills. They already know how to operate in algebra. The neat thing is, your kindergartners this year are going to be working in algebra as well. So sometime around January or February, your kindergartners will be able to do things like 4 plus some number equals 6, some number being like an X, and they'll be able to mentally be able to give you that response accurately. It's really cool. So if we start with algebra in kindergarten, there's no reason why they can't do it when they get up here. But you also have some students that 20% in the middle and 22% of your 9th and 10th graders that didn't have those basic skills, add, subtract, multiply, divide, and basic fractions, to place them into the pre-algebra program. So for those kids, we're looking at for a very intensive remedial math called corrective mathematics, and they are module specific, but again, double dosed. We should be able to get all of those students through the corrective math in the first semester. They're essentials in the second semester, which means they'd be ready for Algebra 1 next year. And while delayed, better delayed and passed Algebra 1 at a very high level than dragged through Algebra 1 and failing, which is what we're seeing now.
Also, if you predict 2 or 3 years from now, by that model, are you implying that our 6th graders should
I'm
be
going to show
taking?
you that in just a second.
Okay.
So this is from roadblocks and speed bumps on the Algebra 1 pathway, and what we know about kids having trouble with Algebra 1. Let me just get to where I need to be. That's your data, and you've now seen all of that. Let me get to. You know, Algebra 1 is a dropout trigger.
It is.
Okay. Algebra 1 and English 9. So 2 years, no more, again, at the secondary school level. At the secondary level, we don't want children spending more than 2 years in an intervention. If we're spending more than 2 years in intervention, we're not doing intervention right. Okay. So same questions when it comes to algebra. What's their numeracy gap? How much do we need to learn? So this is the Common Core model, is that all students will do Algebra 1 in high school. And your 9th graders are in Algebra 1. The problem is the Common Core says that in 6, 8, they should be able to do expressions and equations and know the number system. But your 6, 8 students can't. So that's why we've got to back that in. K5, this is how Common Core feeds into those bands. Operations in algebraic thinking starts at grade K. It starts in kindergarten. Number and operations base 10 and fractions, again, starts at kindergarten. So if they're not mastering those skills K5, they can't do 6, 8, they can't do Algebra 1. That's the Common Core strand. So what we've done is replace those grade levels, and we look at a non-grade specific but instructionally appropriate content. Where do we catch those kids in those different bands and get them ready for Algebra 1? This is a national number. 25% of high school freshmen don't qualify for an Algebra 1 class. If you talk to the universities, they're doing a lot of remedial math. A lot of remedial math. 39% of 8th graders in the lowest 2 quartiles in math, if you're taking a nationally normed assessment, so not your Mississippi assessment, but a NAEP correlate, they'll get a final grade or D or F in whatever 9th grade math course they complete. So our low kids are going to fail Algebra 1 given a true grade and a rigorous algebra class. So in a master schedule, let me get to the math, they would do basic mathematics for 2 periods as opposed to their Common Core math and an elective class. So in order to implement this appropriately, you would need to eliminate some electives. Sometimes that doesn't go over so well, but again, are you here for the electives or are you here for the education of the child in the things that they have to take to pass the Common Core state standards and to succeed in life? So math and math intervention, intensive math, in year 1, they can take from subtraction through division. That's what we planned. We're going to skip the division, fractions, and algebra. Well, we're not going to skip the algebra prep. In year 2, algebra prep. In year 3, algebra 1. We can do this a little bit faster, again, if they have 2 periods of math all the way through. With the goal being, again, to get those kids who actually need to go all the way back to subtraction through the corrective remedial piece first, algebra prep in the 2nd semester, and then algebra 1 in the 2nd year. So for your 6th graders who start Essentials for Algebra this year will take it 6th grade and 7th grade so that the teachers can monitor all the practice. They will take Algebra 1 in 8th grade. So your current 6th graders will take Algebra 1 as 8th graders. That allows them to get through high school taking higher math, calculus, and trigonometry, if they so choose.
That's good.
Okay? The same can be true of your 7th graders. They can get all the way through that higher math. The challenge will be your 9th and 10th graders. We'll get them through Algebra 2 or geometry. They just may not have time to go further unless, again, the school looks at doing a double block system. So we look in terms of assessment. We have placement-oriented and teaching-oriented assessment. Placement tells us what to teach. That's the data that you've seen. As we get into the teaching, there'll be teaching-oriented assessment that tells us how to teach it. Do we need to double block? Can we accelerate? Can we move faster? Can we skip lessons? That's humor. When we look at how traditional math is taught, these are some of the problems that we see, and I'm not going to read those for you.
That is true. That is true. Too much too fast.
So in instructional design, typically in Algebra 1 is a single track system. It starts here, it ends there. What we've done with Essentials for Algebra and the math instruction, as well as the reading instruction, is more like a quadruple or quintuple helix. So there are larger bands and smaller bands, and they're all interwoven. In the track system, and that's this, the first 15 lessons, and these are kids who could do a little short division, but they didn't have all the tool skills, but they still place. This is the vast majority of your kids. Needed to start at lesson 1. So in the first 15 days of instruction, they'll get a review on short division, decimal rounding, operations in decimals and fractions, fraction decimal percent equivalences, and some basic geometry skills. And then we're going to jump right to rate equations and fraction simplification. But what you can see if you look at just lesson 50, which is very non-traditional, they're going to work in rate equations, they're going to work on algebra, just standard algebra, the coordinate grid system, geometry, and exponents. So these are lessons, these are the skills tracks. What we do not do is teach one track for an extended period of time. We constantly want to keep bringing, because real life doesn't allow you to just subtract for a year, does it? If you think about mentally what you have to do, what we have to do as adults with mathematics on any given day, you're using fractions when you're baking, you're doing a little addition, maybe a little subtraction. If you're extending a recipe, you're making it for 8 instead of 4, you're doing some multiplication, right? So we can't afford for kids in higher math to just operate on one track forever. So it's much more like real math. Typical pre-algebra text introduction does it this way. And I always say, I am a reading person. Algebra is my stretch. I took it in high school, geometry, algebra 3, 4, started trigonometry, but Mr. Nadeau was evil, so I quit. I'm a literacy person. But this is what's typically done in algebra. Here's what we do. We start by giving them concepts that are difficult to understand very explicitly, systematically, in small bits, so that we're positive they've got it. If they haven't gotten it, then they can't go further. So we have to make sure that they catch it. There we go. Those are the things we talked about. So this is what I'm going to show you is how we do integers over 40 lessons. 40 lessons. So they're going to start just by understanding what is a sign, a negative or a positive. A negative integer, less than 0, a positive integer, more than 0. And on that day, that's all they're going to do with integers. That's it. One exercise. We're going to plant a seed. They'll get it. Then we ask them to circle a number that's farthest away from 0. This is on the next day. Okay? So what's farther away from 0, -3 or +1? If kids don't have this concept, they can't perform working with integers. Building on again. So they'll do multiple tasks this one day here. On again. And you can see that we're teaching them constantly working with integers. Again, this is over 40 lessons. This is now 37 lessons in, 42 lessons in. So now we're getting into some addition and subtraction, both column and that horizontal. And I don't know if you noticed it, but we continue to give them direction. How do you do this? Combine all the plus values, combine all the minus values, combine the totals for the pluses and the minuses. Positive and negative, when they've got the concept, we'll layer on the language. We want to make sure they have concept first. Okay? Again, those basic rules, constantly making sure that's in front of the kids, but again, we have to make sure the kids are reading so that they understand this. 51 lessons, 54 lessons. Oops. And at lesson 54, they're done working with this and ready to move on to another concept, to build this into the next layer of algebra. So this is what I just talked about. Grades 7 and 8, they'll do that Essentials for Algebra. At 9th grade, they can do Algebra 1. At 10th grade, Algebra 2. That's our goal. That's what the Common Core says we should be doing. We can do this here. We ask you to invest in us, trust us, let us please come and work with your children. This is what we like to do. There should be no excuses. We've already talked about this. Professional development. All of your teachers will have initial professional development in the classes and the courses that they are teaching. That professional development, we've been working together to set up a schedule for it. Consultants are ready to come. As I said, tickets are purchased, hotels are reserved, materials are on the way for all that training. We're ready to go to work. Your administrators will receive in your proposal packet, it's got this laid out. Your administrators will receive 3 days of professional development, because if the principals don't know what's being taught and how it should be taught, it's very difficult for the administrators to evaluate the efficacy of what's happening in their classroom. We work with the coaches ongoing because ideally we want to back out of here as you raise your internal capacity. So we want to build your coaches up so that they could take the place of our consultants and making sure that fidelity is maintained and training your teachers on an ongoing basis. So we do run coaches institutes. There are also national coaches institutes that are offered. We have a half day set aside for bringing all of your special educators together and making the adjustments to children who have true severe cognitive impairment. What do you do with the children that are on the autism spectrum? How do we adjust the instruction for the children who are nonverbal? You will not need another program because we've been working with these programs in special education populations as well. So there are some specific add-ons that we can train the teachers to do to work with those more, your lower incidence disabilities children. Extensive on-site support, again, I've talked about that coaching model where our consultants go into the classrooms, work with your teachers, with their children during instruction. We do not believe in sit and get and spray and pray. We want to make sure that the coaches are right there with the teachers, with the kids, so that what is taught in professional development is applied in the classroom. And we know that application only occurs at a very high level when coaches are coaching teachers in the classroom. Implementation fidelity jumps to about 90% when you have in-classroom coaching. If we only do the outside PD where teachers come together and they get their training, then you're only looking about a 15% fidelity to implementation. So we know that on-site coaching is critical. We anticipate that your parents are going to have some questions. If I were a parent, I would. And so our consultants will be on-site. I will probably be on-site for parent nights where we can address the concerns that parents might have, show what this model is, why it was selected, and answer any questions they have, as well as custom sessions. So as we see what's happening with implementation, where fidelity is, where we're seeing challenges either by school, by grade level, by program, or by the district as a whole, we will design professional development sessions that address the need that we're seeing in the school. So again, nothing terribly canned. If we see that, and one thing that we don't imagine will be behavioral issues, your kids are great. Behavior-wise, they are wonderful. I love it. I mean, my kids brought weapons to school. So that's a non-issue.
Madam President, I have just a question. At parent night, as well as possibly or making the pathway to do it, will the parents of the students that took the assessment, all students, receive a copy of that assessment on their child?
That would be a district decision. You have all the assessments, they're coming back today. You will have them all if the district decided to do that. However, it may not make a lot of sense to the parents.
Sure.
We can do an overview of and show the parents what the assessments look like.
Is that
and the
will we
criteria
use that
for passing.
assessment, that same assessment again?
No, that assessment is valid one time, and that's for entry placement. They will consistently get a benchmark and mastery assessment. In mathematics, for example, it's every 10 lessons they have a mastery. But their connected platform, where the teachers are entering the data, will print. You could send home a weekly report card from there if you wanted to, and it will tell the parents exactly how their child is performing in each program, what their data looks like. I see you. What their data looks like, how they're progressing towards meeting the standards. One of the things that the program does, that the data tool does, is that you can see based on the mastery test that a child took today, what Common Core state standards have been mastered to what level. Mm-hmm. So across 20 standards, the child has mastered 5 of them at 100%, 2 of them at 80%. I mean, it's very, very detailed information matched up to your Common Core state standards. Yes, ma'am.
So at the onset, parents will understand exactly at what level their child is.
Yes.
So that they understand where their
The
child needs
critical
to go.
need. Yes. Yes. I think that parents that are informed make better decisions about, yes, Johnny gets to school every single day, on time, ready to learn. We won't take vacation November, December. We're going to have the kids here. We're going to have them ready to go and ready to learn.
But Mr. Spearship, we had talked to the principals and we're setting that up as far as the structure of the parent night to inform the parents. Thank you.
Okay. So I know we had talked, Dr. Hickman and I spoke about there being a sense of urgency. I think you see that as you look at the data. We know that motion creates momentum. We've got to get started for the momentum to build. We also know that the harder we do this, the faster kids are going to go, the faster your teachers are going to go. So I just leave you with this one. Which kids needs intervention? And why do we let him fall so many times before we do something about it? That's not what our kids should be doing. So we want to see your kids graduate, be able to read the diploma that they get, every word that's on it, and be able to make that diploma count for something, whether they choose college or career, that it means something when they walk to an employer and say, I graduated from Columbus Municipal School District. And that's all I have for you.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Berry?
Just have a couple more. The platform is web-based.
Yes.
Printed materials, what?
You have both digital and print materials, yes.
Okay. So we would need a platform of technology to support it.
Yes. And we have done that technology assessment.
Okay, and
preliminary.
so are we fully ready to go forward with it without having any additional technology integrated into our system?
We are piecemealing. We
And that
can,
means no.
we can make it work, but, and this is not
can make
my lane.
curriculum work,
We can make
right?
curriculum work, but
Right.
your kids have to take the park.
Right. And we're trying to get away from making it work.
Right.
Right.
It will work a whole lot better if you have proper technology.
But we're the, we're the flex assessment of the older grades that's in the middle school. In the middle school, we have the technology. And so we had looked at that. And the fifth grade is what we're working with Beth right now to figure that out. But the other aspect of it is, just like she said, we're not equipped to take the park assessment
it's-
either. So
Right.
legally, we're going to have to do something as far as technology. We're going to give you some proposals. In the ideal world, what I would propose would be a 2-to-1 at the high school and 3-to-1 at the elementary. The worst case scenario would be 2-to-1 at the high school, and then we staff our elementaries to be able to take the assessment, the test. So we have laptop carts. But that would be the bare minimum that we can do. But that's coming, that will be coming later on with a different proposal. I'm working with Beth, and we're working with the Microsoft consultants that's actually aligned with McGraw-Hill. The Microsoft consultants, they understand the curriculum and our needs.
Okay, and, right, well, I mean, Microsoft, I mean, I'm thinking Dell, HP, the actual computer manufacturers.
Microsoft works with a number of OEM providers.
Right.
So they look at, I have a partnership with Microsoft. That's how we were able to bring them in so quickly.
Okay.
They understand the digital requirements of all our instruction plus the park. And it was a fast way to get that information here. So they can work with whatever OEM you have a contract with. What they specialize in is making sure that you've got the right bandwidth, that
Right.
you have enough on-ramps for the kids that are going into Flex or into Essentials and using the digital tools there to be able to get in and to operate. And they also do the training of your teachers on the devices that are being provided by the schools. So they'll teach your teachers how to use the Windows 8 platform.
Right, okay.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Berry?
Just the last question that I have is, with what is being proposed and, going through the Mississippi Department of Education and reviewing what it is with State Board of Education and how they evaluate which books are on contract, which have been submitted, approved for curriculum, how does all this come into that realm?
Okay. Couple of different answers to that. One, Mississippi does not ever do an intervention call. So we've never submitted, submitted anything to Mississippi for intervention review because Mississippi doesn't call for it. Mississippi has not done a call for Common Core secondary reading, nor have they done a call for Common Core elementary mathematics. So the connecting math and your flex literacy have not yet been called for. We're waiting for those calls. The same time, Mississippi, as we talk to the State Department, is telling us we're not sure if we're going to do calls anymore, period. We're going to move to a non-adoption.
Right.
So there may not ever be a call. Reading Mastery has been on the Mississippi State list probably for about 30 years. I could go back, but it's been on the Mississippi list for as long as I can remember, as has corrective reading. What am I missing? So Essentials would be
Flex.
secondary. Which one? Flex?
Flex.
That's because Flex is an intervention program, and they've not done a Common Core reading call for that
But other
band of
states like
intervention.
Indiana, others have. But that's off to the point there.
Yeah.
Back to Mississippi, I understand that while they review, and then of course the State Board of Education adopts, the school districts are not bound to purchase books that are there. They're just basically saying these are more aligned with the curriculum
Right.
that we see that the state is moving toward, correct?
Yes.
That's pretty much
and as
how
I
they
said-
come and put out the request.
Right.
And, whether it be Houghton.
They do a bid
Houghton,
call.
Mifflin, Harcourt,
Yeah.
Harcroft, and others, they just make their submission. So I guess my biggest concern, and not that I'm against it, because I think that what you've proposed here is necessary, is there's a lot of interconnected parts that must also be in place before this is actually fully operational. You said piecemeal. Well, that is no in my world.
I'm sorry, what
When
is
you were
piecemeal?
talking about technology,
No, I said we've managed to make sure that there's enough technology where it needs to be
Right.
to work with the curriculum. Otherwise, we would not have proposed Flex.
right?
We would have put corrective reading, which requires no technology, in 4th and 5th grade.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, again, yes.
I was going to say, Mr. Lewis hasn't asked me a question yet. I'm not going to try and say
Until they come up
Mr.
with their
Lauser.
question, I
Mr.
do have
Liza
one.
Miser.
So I just want to be certain that I'm understanding that this is not a piecemeal situation that you are offering in the model that you've offered to us. You understand and have worked around the technology that we have, and that what you're offering will work on the technology that we have.
Yes, ma'am.
But we do need to upgrade our technology.
Yes, ma'am. You do need to upgrade your technology if your students are going to take the park.
And so as a follow-up to that, the textbooks that we need, the workbooks that we need, the teacher training, the professional development, all of that is in your proposal.
Everything in the proposal, just sort of a big picture wrap-up, what you're going to see is every grade level reading and mathematics. Excuse me. All of the teacher presentation materials are in there. All of your hardbound student textbooks are in there. All of your workbooks for reading and for mathematics I gave you as free with order for the first year to make the costs go down a little bit. So all of your workbooks are free in year one. All of your digital subscriptions are in there, and I gave you free digital access for every child for reading and mathematics K through 5. That was just an add-on. What am I missing? Your test prep that's built in or woven into the curriculum that teaches children how to take a standardized assessment, it's built in there. I provided that as free with order as well. Your teacher professional development initial training is all free with order. 30 days of on-site coaching, free with order. Administrator training, free. Coaches training, free. Special ed training, free. Additional professional development that would be based on what we see in terms of a needs analysis as we go to the schools, that is offered at $2,500 per day. That's just an additional should you decide later on that you want more days. But all of the other is included. So everything that you need to get started is in there, ready to go, and to make sure that this can happen as quickly as I've understood the need to be. All of those materials have been placed on reserve in our warehouse, and if you say go, I send an email. Once we have a purchase order, they will ship the next day.
And let me make sure this is correct. The free with order for the professional development and consumables alone is roughly 200, 300,000 maybe?
Right about $200,000,
But
yes.
those will be, we'll have to pay for that. You said the free in the first year.
Free the first year. So next year you would need to buy consumable workbooks.
Right.
And I anticipate because of the sort of the below grade bubble that you have, that you'll need to buy some first grade materials and possibly some second grade materials next year, but not much.
And consumables that's a standard cost that you put in your budget. That's
Right,
what
no,
students
I
write in.
understand that.
But
Right.
but not if we don't need the lump sum of professional development again, we wouldn't incur that cost and those kind of things.
But as the platform is updating things, there would need to be some ongoing coaching. I mean, for people to stay, I mean, just like students have atrophy, also administrators and teachers have
We
atrophy.
do like to, we like to come
You have
back
new-
and see
you
ya.
have new
So-
teachers that
right,
hire and
new
come into the
teacher,
district.
So
But
next year.
Our sustainability model is also to train our coaches, our in-house coaches, to be able to do an onboarding process of our new teachers and those things. And that's later on. But what I'm implying is the massive amount of professional development that I begged for, that we need side by side with our teachers, that is unheard of. We wouldn't replicate that large quantity of professional development.
You will also get, because you will purchase consumables next year, and if that consumables order is roughly $100,000, we are going to come back and train your new teachers, do reinforcement training for your continuing teachers, because when you purchase, we do provide professional development as free with order. So we don't intend to go away immediately. We like that relative that comes at Christmas and doesn't go home until you invite them to leave very firmly. We want to make sure that your coaches are up to speed, both through the professional development we do on site, as well as we can make recommendations for national cadres where we do coaches training outside of the district, where they would work with coaches from around the country. But to get that internal capacity built up takes about 3 years before it's sustainable.
And so, Dr. Hickman, if I understand Dr. Berry correctly, if we decide that this is the strategy that we want to employ, the workbooks, the professional development are standard things that we have to do that we do as a school district, period, going forward. Each year we figure out what
Yes.
materials, resources are needed.
Yes, ma'am.
And what professional development is needed.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Unless you do our traditional model, what we have been doing that hasn't worked is we buy textbooks and then we make up everything else.
And anything digital, our feeds are, we push new digital content in roughly every 30 days. So those are constantly being updated and upgraded. If the Common Core standards change, shift, adjust, those feeds will go in automatically. And because everything is web-based, not server-based, you don't have to do anything on your end. It's just going to push right in.
And there was one thing that I didn't hear you, Dr. Berry, reiterate in your inclusions, and that is customized sessions. I think you said
Yes,
by
ma'am.
school, by, it
By
could be by
school.
school, it could be by grade.
Right, so it'll be a needs analysis. When we look, our consultants will come back together. They'll work with their leads. You have a lead consultant for elementary and a lead consultant for secondary. And they're going to talk about what they're seeing in the classroom and where they think there's a greater need for PD. And it could be that we're talking about higher order thinking and expository texts. And so what they'll do is if they're seeing that's a need district-wide, they'll develop the PD session for that. We would work with, I'm assuming, Ms. Lenore to find a day to do that, either as an after-school training or as an all-day on a regular teacher professional development day.
And Ms. Bragg has worked with you on that also. Just to understand also the beauty of this program, when people talk about customized professional development, they're somewhere else out of town. They look at our data and they have templates of what they're going to provide, and they come and talk to us. They have never seen our teachers. They have never seen our classrooms. They don't know our real needs. What they mean by customization is that they're in our buildings, and they're looking at our data, and they're actually working with our teachers, and then they talk as much consultants what it looks like district-wide or building-wide or classroom-wide, and then they customize the professional development. And so we're going away from the traditional model of professional development where it's a sit and get or it's not job embedded. And this professional development is very job embedded. And the research is real strong about job embedded professional development yields results.
And one point that I would like to make very clear, because I've heard it mentioned a couple of different times from different individuals, is about the individuals creating curriculum and different things. And there's no skirting around the issue that failure solely rests on the school board and not the administrators and not anyone else. So as long as we can all come to terms with that, I think that things will work much better versus trying to cast that blame elsewhere.
I don't think the blame is cast anywhere.
Well, no, I mean, it was stated earlier about individuals, and I'm not just using words, I'm just saying it was just basically stated earlier of how that, okay, well, you've got, teachers creating this and doing different things. Well, that's what they were told to do from this board.
Right,
So-
that was just a fact.
So
I'd
I
like to
just,
speak to
because,
that.
I mean, we have great
Wasn't
staff
personal.
and teachers, and as long as we understand that,
Absolutely.
then we're good, versus casting that blame and moving in a different direction, because the system that has been utilized has been a direct vote up and down by this board.
Right, and I agree with you. And one of the things that we talked about with Dr. Berry was the question is, and the entire staff, administrative staff, is do we have the right people in place? Because you can still have a curriculum, but you can still have real, very unskilled, unmotivated, ineffective people and personnel. And when I talk to also the teaching staff with the coaches, we feel that we have the right people in place. We do feel like we have the right people to have the right skill level in place. That what we're doing is we're providing better tools. It's just like a skilled workman without good tools. And so we're providing better tools that they can do what they're trained to do and what they're equipped to do. We do have a lot of great people in place.
Ms. Fisher.
Mr. Spears, I want to thank you for making mention of that. I in no way, because I did make the comment regarding the individualized instruction or curriculum development, I in no way am addressing individual members of our school district. What I intended to address and what I do address is the process or the lack of a standardized process. And I do agree that the sole onus is on the board for that. Not this board in particular, because it's gone back for quite a long time, over a couple of decades or a decade. But I do agree that it's the board's, because we are responsibility, and onus, because we are the governing body of this district. So lest anyone misinterpret what I said, it is not toward individual members of our district employees.
All right, thank you.
But thank you for mentioning that.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Thank you, Mr. Spears and Dr. Hickman. And because it does lie at the feet of this board to make sure that we're providing our teachers with the tools that they need to be successful, and so that we can move student achievement forward. That brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is the, yes.
I motion objection to the question being proposed to us to approve it, because that would be a clear violation of our current policies. Now, the materials, BCBE states that we are to have all information to make an informed decision 72 hours before the meeting, and this was given to us after 4 o'clock yesterday. Some of the questions that were posed earlier, such as technology, such as, we just paid $500-something for textbooks. How are we recouping that money to fund this purchase? Have yet to be answered. And therefore, not only will we be violating our own policy, our fiduciary responsibilities in that same manner. Now, if we want to come back on Thursday after the 72 hours to where we have adequate amount of time to speak with Dr. Hickman and others to find out answers to the questions so that we can make sure and then come back with the technology and everything else that we need to do, so be it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spears. Dr. Hickman, with regards to the textbooks that we agreed to purchase earlier this summer before you came, what is the strategy for that?
The strategy for that would be that we're going to resell them to a wholesaler. And I already have Ms. Lenore is in contact with the wholesaler to purchase the books back, and we will recoup, whatever the amount is. There's not an exact amount yet until they see our materials and see the condition of our materials. But we're never going to recoup all the money totally, but we will recoup some back and recycle that to our taxpayers in an honest way.
Well, and that leads me to, my question is, where do we as a board, because obviously, we have to understand with the fiduciary responsibility that we could be held personally liable for that loss. And so that's why I asked that, based on our policy and us just now getting the information, that we take that time to deliberate and find out the answer to those questions before moving forward on this.
Excuse me, Dr. Hickman, what is the other question, Mr. Spears, from a fiduciary responsibility? If the books are going
if we don't recoup all the money from just making this purchase, where does that leave us personally on that purchase? David, would you like to chime in?
Mr. Dine?
I'll be happy to speak to this. If you'd allow me, I'm going to be kind of deliberate in this because it's, and just bear with me. I'm going somewhere with this, and I think I understand what Mr. Spears is saying. if you look at the duties, first of all, of the superintendent and the duties of the board, I'm going to speak in general terms. Generally speaking, you hire the expert, he's the education guru, if you want to call him that, and he makes recommendations. And so you've got to rely upon your superintendent and the team, pretty much. That doesn't mean that the school board's not involved, because they've got to fund this. So they're a critical part or element in this. Okay, so that's first. And you can look at 37.9 for, duties of superintendent, 37.7, duties of trustees. It's clear to me that superintendent's in charge. He's got to make this recommendation. The trustees clearly have a duty to be good stewards of the money. There's no doubt about that. The resources and providing the funding. So this is an unusual situation. I don't know I ever remember this happening before, in that you've already purchased curriculum. And so,
Our curriculum, books.
books, okay, I'm sorry.
And there's a difference.
Okay.
We purchase textbooks that are language. This is a reading program and a language program, so we don't have this.
Okay, that's a salient point. It's a hook. That's very important, and don't let me forget it, if you
Yes,
would.
sir.
And I'm not an educator. I'm trying my darndest to, stay in the game here and understand everything that's going on. I do know school law, and I do know that the trustees do have some exposure if they don't act prudently and they are not good stewards. So it's an unusual situation. Now, it's very clear to me that Dr. Hickman is convinced that the current curriculum, and we'll just call it current curriculum because I can't remember the name of the company, excuse me, not curriculum, the textbooks are not what the students need to achieve.
Absolutely.
And I'm, and also that McGraw-Hill has the goods, not only the books, but the curriculum to do the job. And I'm not an educator, but it sure just sounded great to me, really did. I'm impressed with your presentation. And so basically, what we've got to do is we've got to understand that assuming that the curriculum is better, that McGraw-Hill is providing, or it is a curriculum, and we don't have that now. And well, we have a curriculum, but it's been made by us, basically, is what I'm hearing we're saying.
It's not complete.
Not complete, but we do have a curriculum that's been implemented of some sort. So taking that curriculum and those textbooks that we already have, we need to quantify and record in the minutes, make a finding in the minutes as to why that incomplete curriculum and those textbooks are not adequate to get the job done, and why the McGraw-Hill curriculum and textbooks and training, free coaching or whatever this is, $200,000. And if and if this board, a majority of the board, determine that and make that finding, I don't think this board will have any. It's my opinion. You'll have no liability. If you just go off and approve it and buy it and then lose a bunch of money, then I don't know that you'd have a liability, but I think you would have some exposure and there'd be a question about it. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I'm looking for those hooks and that incomplete curriculum, the $200,000 of training, and a bunch of other stuff that's been said today that I need if we're going to make a finding. And yeah, I agree with Mr. Spears that there is a rule for 72 hours for materials to be obtained.
Could I comment on that rule? If I read it correctly, it says of a regular board meeting. It doesn't say of a special board meeting.
No, BCBE says meetings. It does not say.
It says meeting materials shall be delivered to board members 72 hours in advance of meetings to allow their considered study of items
And that's
on the
fine.
agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Thank you, Mr. Spears. Thank you, Dr. Hickman. Mr. Dunn, back to your point about making sure that we record the findings in our minutes. Would that be record the findings in this meeting, the minutes of this meeting, or the meeting
When you
minutes
take
of
the action.
When we take the action.
Yes, you'd want to say the school board trustees have considered, we can draft it. If I have the hooks and you really, you know, and
Sure.
majority of the board believe it, we can draft it. And of course, you can suspend your rules. I believe there's
That was my next question.
I think there's a policy that says you can suspend your rules. It will require two-thirds of the members present, which I think we've had this come up a couple of years ago, and you know, that would be 4 out of 5 would have to vote to suspend the rules, because you can't have 3-point something, you know.
So that, my motion is on the table, which was the objection to this, and of course, based on our policy of 72 hours, as well as the unknowns, I don't see any why we would have to rush with haste. I mean, the training in the email that was sent from Ms. Berry stated they would start on September the 2nd through September the 12th, if I recall it correctly. And so we're looking at, what's that, 72 hours from now, the 29th?
Okay, well,
So
thank you.
As she stated earlier, the phone, you know, the ticket's been booked, the hotels, all the 9 yards, so that's my motion.
Okay,
We also
that's
have a
Mr.
training,
that's-
we also have a training that will be set up for our coaches, am I correct?
all right. Thank you, Dr. Hickman.
This week.
Thank you, Dr. Hickman. Thank you, Mr. Spears. Mr. Spears' motion, is there a second, Ms.
I'll
Lawson-Hauser?
second Mr. Spears' motion.
I need the motion.
Okay, Mr. Spears, will you restate your motion?
My motion is to the objection of the question being consideration to approve budget increase from fund balance to purchase proposed 2014-15 McGraw-Hill curriculum in the amount of $610,000. And just to be clear, I'm not opposed to what we saw here. I'm opposed that I'm having to rush and do this, and we would be willfully violating our policy.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Spears.
Could I ask that you repeat it now that I turned my recorder on? You talk so fast.
Sure. A motion, objection to the question, which is consideration to approve budget increase from the fund balance to purchase proposed 2014-15 McGraw-Hill curriculum in the amount of $610,000.
Okay, and then Mr. Lotzenhauser seconded.
It's been motioned by Mr. Spears. It has been seconded by Mr. Lotzenhauser. Is there any discussion?
I'd just like to say is that I know, Mr. Dunn, you said that, you know, if we phrase when we get to the point of approving this, if we phrase the motion in a certain way that you do not think the board members would have any individual liability, for myself, I would like to get a letter from you to that effect. I would like to have that in hand before I cast a vote on this matter.
And it's not the phrasing. I didn't say phrasing. It's that this board actually find
Yeah,
the facts.
Well, that is, to me, that's a phrase, how you couch it, how
Well,
you phrase it, how you state the motion.
Yeah, I'm making a point, not because I don't think you understand, but I just want everybody to understand that it's got to be based on facts. It's not like smoke and mirrors and, oh, we just use the right language, it'll be okay. It's not. You got to make a finding of facts, and that's fine. I'll be happy to help you with that.
All right. It has been motioned and properly second. All in favor of Mr. Spears' motion that we not take up the action to even discuss the quotes. Is that your motion? All right. All in favor of Mr. Spears' motion, please signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, please signify by raising your right hand. Please let the record state that the vote is 1, 2, 3, 4 to 1, that we will not take up that action for today.
Madam President,
Yes.
if I'm in order, can I make a motion that we have a meeting on Thursday
Absolutely.
that would
Mr.
allow us the 72 hours so that we can?
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Is there a second to Mr. Lewis's?
We need a time and, yeah.
Mr. Lewis, do you have a particular time
I would like it in the afternoon.
in the afternoon? Mr. Lawson, the afternoon doesn't work for me.
The morning would be out for me, but the afternoon would be fine.
What time? Do you propose a time? Would noon be good?
Well, we received it at 4 o'clock yesterday, so 72 hours would essentially be 4
4 o'clock.
on.
But I have a meeting, I'm president of a board, that's 4 o'clock. I'll be through by 4:30 or 5. I mean, no later than 4:30 or 5.
So wait a minute.
Could we do it at 5, please?
Does not work for me. Could we, Mr. Lewis, would you amend your motion for Friday morning, please?
Mr. Lewis?
Can we do it at 7:30 a.m.?
I can't make it at 7:30, I could make it at
Not 7:30, because the school bus hasn't come to my house by 7:30, so 8 o'clock would be good for me.
4 a.m.?
4 a.m.
8:30?
Yeah, 8:30 would work
No.
better for me, but I might have to make it at 8, and I couldn't make it at 7:30.
I can do it.
Mr. Lewis? Would your motion be for Friday morning for 8:30 a.m.?
9 o'clock?
At 9 o'clock a.m.?
9 o'clock?
9 o'clock
Going
a.m.?
once, going twice.
I know. So Mr. Lewis is,
I will second his motion.
all right, thank you. So it's been motioned by Mr. Lewis, second by Mr. Latzenheiser. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I just want to make certain that the information Dr. Berry stated earlier about the schools utilizing this particular district-wide curriculum would be provided to us, whether, I assume would be sent to the superintendent and he provide it to the board, and then also that we have a understanding as to the timelines being proposed, because in the email it said training would be September the 2nd through September the 12th, and I don't know if Dr. Hickman was going to say a different time for some other staff, but all those different variables would obviously be part of
The
given to
timeline
us
for,
before.
the timeline for the implementation?
Yes.
The implementation training is correct, what you said. She's willing to give her time because she came today, that she's going to be here until Thursday before her flight comes out. She was going to work with our coaches on professional development to help them start we need to start looking at the schedule because we're going to change schedules and those kind of things. So that's what that was about, but not the district-wide training.
Thank you, Dr. Hickman.
Yeah, I would ask that, Mr. Dunn, that letter that I requested, if you could have that in her hands on or before that 9 o'clock Friday meeting, I appreciate it.
That'll be no problem.
All right, thank you. So we will not take up item number 5, which takes us to item number 6, officer personnel.
Question
Did we take the vote for it? Oh, for the meeting.
on that motion?
But we agreed that your motion is for 9 o'clock on Friday. It has been motioned and been
And it's
seconded.
Brandon right here.
Brandon,
Okay.
right, at 9 o'clock. All in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. It is unanimous.
Question.
Yes.
You said that we need to have a finding? Do we need to have that ready on Thursday morning?
Yes,
Do we need
ma'am.
to have a resolution ready on Thursday morning?
Yes, ma'am, and,
All of that will be ready?
but that doesn't mean every.
Prepared.
Right, we'll have an outline
In
and
the event.
and something proposed, and we'll have some hooks there, some bases. It could be added to, you can take away, because I can't do that, it's gonna be
Right.
your finding.
Right.
But I'll have it ready.
And certainly, one of the findings could be is the current state of our district does not show that our students will be able to master or successfully meet state standards as is laid out for the park assessment. That could be one of our
Right.
findings.
The reason I want some additional information about how McGraw-Hill will do it, theirs is that I don't think these textbooks have been used in our district yet, so we can't blame this current state of affairs on the textbooks themselves. And that's my concern, is that we need to deal with that issue.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Madam President,
Yes, Ms. Lewis?
on our Friday's meeting, could you ask
It's
the
Thursday.
No, it's
Thursday
Friday.
night?
It's Friday.
Friday?
It's Friday morning?
It's Friday
Friday,
morning.
9.
9 a.m.
At 9 a.m.
Brandon.
Okay, hold on a second.
Not Thursday.
I'm good. I'm still good.
Okay. Ms. Lewis?
On our Friday's meeting, could we ask the superintendent if there are some deficiencies with the technology? Could he also present them as well?
Dr. Hickman, will you be prepared, or please be prepared?
If you have the
to-
time to do it, or we can take it up later, but
No, sir. Do you mean overall as far as the park assessment or just as far as our curriculum, implementing our curriculum?
I guess what I'm saying is that I've listened to the presentation today, and apparently that we're going to need additional technology. And
That's not what she stated. She said we will, by law, to take the park assessment. That has nothing to do with
Okay.
our curriculum program.
okay, well, let me say this then. For the park assessment,
Yes, sir.
can we get what we need? Can we at least come up so we can look and see what we're going to have to spend to catch up on this technology?
Yes, sir.
if that's enough time. I mean, if there's not enough time, we can just do it at a later meeting, but I'm just saying I would like to get that out the way.
We want to get that to you too, because that's also an
Absolutely.
issue that we need to address as a district. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
Okay.
Absolutely. Now we're ready for, are we ready for item number 6, Office of Personnel? The Columbus Municipal School District job description for Personnel Director. I think that information was provided to us. Does anybody have a need to see that this morning?
I have just a few questions.
Mr. Spears?
With respect to the salary scale, with the candidate being proposed, first, is the candidate still under contract with Greenwood for their federal programs director?
She spoke with her superintendent, and he will release her from her contract upon that if we,
Dr.
with her.
Green, yes. Secondly, because I know you started the position in January of this year, was at Aberdeen as the federal programs director as appointed in, I believe, 2012 by the conservator at the time, and before that, the experience was director of computer technology with the Aberdeen School District. I could go all the way back to graduating from Caldwell in '83, but my question is the scale as to where you're placing her would be at a doctorate level, which she has because she got her bachelor's from Mississippi University of Women and master's degree from Mississippi State and doctorate degree from Mississippi State. But my question is that at no point from the profession do I see that she would be at the experienced $70,000 level. It would seem that based off of that information that I've looked through, that she would be starting at the, let me see it here, I think it's $66,000 a year and not 70.
So, Mr. Spears, is there a motion that you want to make? or-
Well, I mean, it's that we're asked to approve the recommendation at $70,000, and based off of the salary schedule, based off of everything, that would actually put her at $66,000. So I make the motion to hire Ms. Blewett, or Dr. Blewett, excuse me, at the $66,000.
Okay. And that's your motion?
Yes.
Is there a second for Mr. Spears' motion? Is there a second for Mr. Spears' motion? Third time, is there a second for Mr. Spears' motion? So your motion dies for lack of a second.
Okay.
Which brings us back to item number B, consideration to approve salary schedule for Personnel Director. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been motioned by Mr. Lewis. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Fisher. Is there any discussion?
Absolutely.
Mrs. Spears?
I would like to know how exactly, if we have a salary schedule, and this is a personnel director and not federal programs, how we're going to automatically take this individual to the top of the schedule without that experience that's required in the salary schedule. Because even if you were to say she has other acceptable experience, the beginning would be $68,000, not $70,000.
Does anybody have a response for?
I don't know. I don't understand this question.
Okay, let me rephrase. The salary schedule that we have before us starts with a BS degree, and it has a schedule for without experience, acceptable, other experience, and experience. Then it goes to a master's degree, and of course you could have other CPA, and it says without experience, other acceptable experience, experience. Then it goes throughout to where you would get to a doctorate degree. And you have without experience, other acceptable experience, and experience. Now, the question that I have, just to make sure that I'm being as concise as possible, is that while I could understand saying we have other acceptable experience, such as federal programs or director of computer technology in other districts, with the competency of being in human resources, and I'm not saying that she's not competent to do it, it would just say that we would start at the beginning, other acceptable experience, at $68,000, not start on step 2, which would be 70, or go all the way to the bottom and say, we're going to give you experience at $70,000.
So if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Spears, you're just trying to make sure that there are some other experiences that would allow the superintendent to make that offer at $70,000.
That's correct, because all the information that I've gone through with this particular candidate, there is nothing that shows that that would be part of what would put it at $70,000. And so my objection is not to the person. It is to, we're approving a salary schedule where this person is being paid, and we would incorrectly be placing them at a wrong step on the schedule.
And so since I know that it's not, that there is a schedule and that the board makes sure that the schedule, that a schedule is being provided, but it's not our responsibility, or it's not our call to make that recommendation for the hire or for the salary. Is that correct, Mr. Dunn?
And I was not doing that. I actually made the motion to hire the candidate, but at the correct level of $68,000.
The superintendent recommends, the trustees are supposed to vote up or down on any recommendation.
And that's it.
Okay. So we've had discussion, and thank you, Mr. Spears, for your discussion.
And I'm sorry, let me
Ms.
just make
Fisher.
one correction. Your motion was not to hire at 68, it was to hire at 66.
Correct.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
all right. So we
And
have,
it died for a lack of a second.
right, right. So now we're at the place where we need to vote. We're done with our discussion. Is that correct? So all in favor of the motion to hire the candidate for the position of HR director at the salary that has been provided, please signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, please signify by raising your right hand. Please let the record show that the vote was 3-1 to hire at the recommendation of the superintendent. If there is nothing else that comes before this board this morning, I do hereby declare this meeting adjourned.